Injuries continue to pile up on Toronto. Their depth will be tested. Can they get through it in a tough test tonight against the Vegas Golden Knights? We'll discuss that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs centered podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 wager, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Boy, oh boy, Dave, do we ever got a lot to get into today. Where we left you good folks off 24 hours ago is a much different Leafs land than the current climate in which we stand heading into tonight's Vegas Golden Knights game. And it was going to be difficult already, right? You've got the Austin Matthews situation. He's in Germany getting treatment on something. Ryan Reeves begins his 5-game suspension. We had found out that David Kampf was not going to be able to play in tonight's game. He was missing tonight's game. There's an update there based on the way I'm emphatically saying tonight a billion times, people. And a few more injuries, obviously, have also been accumulating over the course of the week. And man, tonight's going to be a grind. I'm kind of excited to see what the young kids can do.
Yeah, that's the exciting part with these. Obviously injuries suck, especially when they come out of nowhere. But it's nice to see that it forces the situation where young guys get a chance to step up, right? Get an opportunity. When Grebenkin was here for the during training camp preseason, there was a lot of fanfare around it, right? When will we see him again? And it was kind of like, if injuries happen, he could be one of the guys that gets called up. And it's nice that, it didn't take long for him to get back, because I want to see what the progress has been like when he was with the Marlies, and now he gets that opportunity. And it's not like he's going to get thrown into maybe a play a few minutes. They might have to rely on him quite a bit tonight, because they're just hit hard, especially in that bottom six.
Yeah, so Nikita Grebenkin and Fraser Minten have both been called up for tonight's game, and so they'll make their season debuts. Grebenkin making his NHL debut in this one tonight. And the reason why that is happening is because, well, no Austin Matthews. Max Pacioretty is injured and on LTIR. Ryan Reeves begins a suspension. Calle Jarnkrok is on LTIR. David Kampf is now on LTIR. We'll get to that in a second. And Max Domi is now on injured reserve and will miss tonight's game as well. So an absolute plethora of injuries to the Maple Leafs team has caused them to dip deep into the Marlies. So they already brought up a couple of guys, right? Steves is around and whatnot. And now they got to go all the way down to Fraser Minten and Nikita Grebenkin. Let's start with the injury news first, and then we can kind of talk about what expectations we might have on Minten and Grebenkin tonight. But David Kampf was placed on LTIR today. He was yesterday declared he was going to be out on injured reserve, wasn't going to play, and then wake up this morning, and all of a sudden they need to create some cap room in order to call up Grebenkin because Max Domi was then placed on injured reserve and they needed an extra body. So kind of a domino effect in a way. So Domi's injury and his placement on IR caused the Leafs to need to call up Grebenkin. And in order for them to be able to do that, to be cap compliant, they needed a cap space, thus making them, forcing them to place David Kampf on LTIR. And he will now miss 10 games in 24 days. And it's a short schedule, so it's going to end up being the 10 games with the schedule coming up. They do not play 10 games within a 24-game span, so he's going to be missing the next 10 games, which Kind of stinks because Kampf, especially with Matthews' injury, had taken up a much bigger role, especially on the penalty kill. He'd been playing, decently. And it's just another situation where the Maple Leafs go from, I might miss a game to now, actually, he's going to be on LTIR and he's out for the next month.
Yeah, that's obviously unexpected. I thought maybe this would be a short stint, but
What's
this is
the
the point.
injury? I don't even know what the injury
I have
is.
no idea. I have no idea. Like that's the part. It's just like if somebody messages like, "Are these guys getting to like UFC fights in like in the locker room or something after practice?" We don't see anything during the game. Like I hadn't seen anything that would suggest to me that he got hurt, or it's not even that he got hurt. It's LT. I know that it's a bit of a cap compliancy reason, but enough that they be sitting him for this long, right? He's gonna be out now for a month, so you're missing out on a center, especially. So that really puts a bit of a bind there. But yeah, I don't know what's going on with these with all these injuries that's been happening, right? We knew that Pacioretty was gonna be out for a while. Domi, you had the feeling that maybe this was going to come at some point of him getting a night off. But I thought, okay, maybe when Austin Matthews is back, that'd be the time where they think about getting Domi that night off. But I guess this is just a point where it's like you just can't do it. And look, they have such a long break in between games, right? I mean, no Saturday night game. That took a minute for me to realize there was no Saturday night game.
I know. I also figured that out today when I saw, because so by him being placed on IR, right, he can't play for 7 days. So from Saturday until Saturday. So he is eligible to play because it's retroactive to last Sunday. He will be retroactive and I believe will be eligible to play that game against Utah because that will be 7 days where he did not play. So because the game is on Sunday, that kind of allowed them to do this. So, okay, he's going to miss tonight. We can put him on IR, but he still will be eligible to come back and play Sunday if he's good to go. But what's kind of confusing about this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but I was listening to Craig Berube's press conference yesterday, and he was asked about Domi, and he said, yeah, he's going to play through it. Like, if we didn't have as many injuries, maybe he'd sit out. And then all of a sudden the next day, he's going to sit out.
Yeah. So there must have been a conversation with the doctors and Domi, and maybe at first he was able to play through it, but maybe they just made the call and was like, yeah, no, this is not as easy as we thought it was going to be for him to play through it. So let's just give him the day. And look, the fact if this was an extended, maybe if they had a few more games to play this week, they would have considered maybe playing him because it's a lot of games you're gonna have to rely on some of this sort of lineup, which we'll get to in a second. But I just think, what? Vegas is a tough team. They're not an easy team to play against. They're a heavy team.
Yeah.
Maybe this is one of those, let's not put him in the line of fire against a team like Vegas as well.
Possibly. I will say this, though, too. Not to say that he's been a liability over the last little bit, but do you know how many games in a row he's gone now without a point? Like literally without a single point. Take a guess. Take a whirl.
Maybe like 9?
13.
13. Wow.
He's gone 13 straight games without a point. So, this is probably also just a good reset maybe for him as well, like a mental reset. And if he comes back, whether it's Sunday or comes back next Wednesday in Florida, he can be in a better space, right? Because he had that time off to maybe reflect, get away from the game, whatever, heal whatever is ailing him clearly. But to go 13 games without a point, not a 5-on-5 point, not like without a single point entirely. Very strange considering he's been playing top 6 minutes for the majority of that time. So hopefully this can be a little reset for him. But Domi out, Kampf out, Matthews out, Reeves suspended. Pacioretty's been out a couple of weeks. Yarncroft's nowhere to be seen. There's a lot of young kids who are getting an opportunity to step up. So why don't we take a break? We'll come back. We'll take a look at what the projected lineup is supposed to look like for tonight's game. Where do these young kids all get placed? So we'll do that, and we'll take a look at Vegas's situation as well, with the Leafs taking on the Golden Knights tonight in Toronto. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup live. PrizePicks put its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. You can sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long with PrizePicks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Today's podcast is also brought to you by GameTime. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. GameTime Picks curates and makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater events, whatever you're looking to get tickets to. They've got great all-in pricing. They've got seat views as well. You get a panoramic seat from the app right before you even buy. There's no surprise fees at the checkout either, and they've got the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you on a game day. Maple Leafs taking on the Vegas Golden Knights in Toronto at Scotiabank Arena. And it's a half Leaf, half Marley looking roster at this point, Dave, especially up front when the 4 groups. Max Domi is not playing tonight. Neither is Austin Matthews. Neither is David Kampf. So the Leafs digging deep into the Marlies and bringing up both Fraser Minten and Nikita Grebenkin for tonight's game. Alex Steves already here as well. So why don't we take a look at the Leafs projected lineup for tonight and what it's supposed to look like here? Because, I mean, we weren't exactly sure what this forward depth is going to look like with all the injuries, especially a guy like Max Domi. So let's pull up the Leafs projected lineup tonight, Dave, and see what it looks like. There it is. There we go. So we're looking at the top line, which played really well the other night in Edmonton, and Bobby McMahon, John Tavares, and Mitch Marner. Looks like Pontus Holmberg is expected to move up the lineup down the middle, and he will center Nylander and Matthew Nyes. Fraser Minten will be the 3C with Robertson and Nikita Grebenkin, we believe. And then Connor Dewar, Steven Lorentz, and Alex Steves will be the forward group. So before we get to the defense, what do you make of this ragtag bunch of forwards going into this game tonight, Dave?
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously a lot of the attention will be on, Minton and Grebenkin, but I mean, if there's a player right now that needs to show what he can do, it's Pontus Holmberg, because he's been the, I don't know what the right way to describe it, but this guy has been just thrown wherever the heck the Leafs need a place to put him, like center, left wing, fourth line, second line, third line. He's done everything but play the first line, which if you're putting Pontus Holmberg on the first line, there's a serious problem. But
I've done it before.
I mean, at the same time, we could be getting to that point with the way that things have been going with this team injury wise. But yeah, I mean, I'm surprised they didn't try Nylander at center because of all the injuries, but I guess they just feel like Holmberg is the better option as a centerman rather than putting Nylander there.
Yeah, apparently Marner was a consideration as well. Again, yesterday in practice, asked about the center depth and if Marner if they would consider it, and apparently Coach Berube said he's talked to Marner about it, and if it's what they need to do at some point, Marner's ready and prepared to play center. So, I mean, I guess for now they're gonna roll with Holmberg, but if things don't go well, Dave, I could see Marner, taking a couple of shifts down the middle. I would
Yeah,
not be shocked to see it.
I wouldn't be shocked either. When that pot, I don't know how that came up too. I guess somebody must have asked if Marner was an
Yeah,
option, but yeah, I can totally see it happening. And Craig Burberry literally said this guy has played defense for this team, so asking him to play center wouldn't be, out of the realm. I know this morning's skate he was also working on the faceoffs too. That's the only thing about Marner. He hasn't really done. I mean, he's done draws on the penalty kill, but he has not taken a lot of faceoffs. So,
yeah.
and he's usually not the first option if Matthews gets kicked out. So it'd be interesting to see if that does end up being something that they try out tonight. If Holmberg isn't up to snuff with playing center there.
Defensively, there is a change in on the blue line. Yanni Hakanpää coming out of the lineup after playing his first couple of games of the season, and Simon Benoit will check back in. So the defensive pairings are as such. You've got McCabe and Tanev. Riley, we believe, will be back with Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and then Simon Benoit and Connor Timmins will patrol the third pair. Your thoughts on Hakanpää coming out of the lineup as opposed to Connor Timmins in favor of Benoit?
Yeah, that's what I was. I guess that was a surprising part is that Timmins wasn't coming out, but I guess they feel that they need the offensive punch, right? With the Timmins in the lineup, that could be the reason why. I know Hakanpää coming out isn't as surprised me for two reasons. One, I mean, the guy is also they got to watch this knee and make sure that he's not overdoing it. And Benoit would be sitting out for a while.
Yeah, that's what I think it is more so. I think it's more so just, let's ease him in. He's played a few games. Let's give him a night off, kind of ease him back into it because he didn't have a training camp or anything either, right?
No.
So, yeah, I think it's more so health related where they're like, they've got a game plan for how many games they want him to play in a row, especially early on. And I think it was just one of those, all right, he's played a few. Let's give him a night off, give him some time to rest up that knee, and let's get Benoit back into a game. So, we've watched them play before Hakanpää got into the lineup, and it was fine. So I'm not overly worried about that switch. And it does sound like Joseph Woll is going to be the starter for the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight. So the
Tandem,
the Great Woll. No, I was gonna say the Wildebeest, but it's the Hildebeest. But you could call him the Wildebeest too, I suppose.
the brick wall.
The brick wall. Thank you. The brick wall gets the start tonight against Vegas over Anthony Stolarz.
I'm not surprised. Again, they don't like players sitting too long. There's like a lot of rest in between games. So they play Saturday, don't play until Wednesday. They play Wednesday, they don't play until Sunday. Like that's a long time to have guys kind of sitting. And I think you'll see Stolarz go right back in against Utah. Like I think that's the plan. And then eventually we'll have a few more games in a row. So then I think they'll both get a healthy amount of playing time here down the stretch.
Yeah, I think we'll end up seeing that, seeing the alternate, see them all continue to alternate as they have over the last 5 or 6 games here. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll look at what Vegas has in their lineup tonight and take a look at the game preview as a whole and give our final predictions of how tonight's game is going to go. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NHL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NHL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. My best bet for tonight's Leafs and Golden Knights game, I like Bobby McMahon to go over 2.5 shots tonight. Since he's gone up with the big boys on the top line, he's been very productive, averaging over 5 shots a game in those 3 outings. I think it continues tonight against Vegas. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you place that first $5 bet and win. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Network. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. We got new pods coming out each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, available wherever you get a podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Apple, wherever. And also, we are up on YouTube with new shows. It's all Leafs all the time on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Your Toronto Maple Leafs taking on the Vegas Golden Knights tonight down at Scotiabank Arena. And we took a look already at what the Maple Leafs lineup is looking like. How about the Vegas Golden Knights lineup, Dave? Let's take a look at Vegas. Another team dealing with some injuries. Mark Stone also out tonight, and they've got a couple of injuries on the blue line as well. It's going to be an interesting hockey game, but I'm taking a look at this Vegas team. They don't seem to be as deep as they once were, especially up front. Wouldn't you say, Dave?
Yeah, like they're not winning games because they have a really good forward group. I mean, it's they put a lot of emphasis on their back end, right? And right now, it doesn't help that once again Mark Stone is hurt, so they don't have he was really good to start the year for them. So, and I think Victor Olofsson's also out too. So those are like 2 forwards that you have them in, and this forward group looks a lot different. But yeah, I mean this is a team that's when they don't have they don't have the depth to get through injuries, right? When they're missing a couple bodies. Like they're digging deep to find replacements up front with their forwards.
Yeah, so their lineup is as follows: Jack Eichel, first line center with Barbashev, and Pavel Dorofeyev, who actually leads the team with 9 goals, surprisingly, this year. He's having a bit of a breakout season. Nick Waugh centering the second line with Thomas Hertl and Keegan Colasar. While Bill Carlson, third line center with Brett Howden and Alexander Holtz, and then Cole Schwindt and Tanner Pearson are your forwards. And they went with they went 12-7 in the last game, 12-7 because of the injuries to their forward group, and so they may go 12-7 again for the next game potentially. So it's something to keep an eye on. What's their blue line situation looking like, Dave?
Yeah, you got Alex Pietrangelo and Shea Theodore as their top pairing, Brandon McDavid and Korczak as their second pairing, and you have Noah Hanifin and Zach Whitecloud as their third pairing. Like that's a deep blue line. I know that you look at the second pairing, it doesn't look as thrilling, but it's a very tough second pair. Like McDavid's a tough customer. He just got a contract extension too. Like it's a deep blue line. That's what I think is going to give the Leafs a lot of trouble, is a pretty deep blue line here.
Couldn't help but notice, Dave, something different that you did while illustrating the defensive pairings.
What I do differently?
Do you know Korczak's first name?
No, I do not know Korczak.
You purposely left it.
No, I do.
Like everyone else, you went first and last. There's like,
hey, at least I got the name right. I'll say that.
I know that's true. That is true. That's a tough name to get. Caden Korczak is the name.
I know he was a draft pick of theirs. That I do remember.
Yeah, one of the few draft picks that they've decided to hold on to and have drafted and developed.
Congratulations, sure you made it through the development process.
I'm looking right now, actually.
How many of the players
only drafted was Dorofeyev? Go look at Dorofeyev. That's the only other player who might be a drafted and developed player. Outside of that, like this guy legitimately might be the only one in their lineup, and he was. So they're both drafted. Yeah, in the third in the same draft in the 2019 draft. So Pavel Dorofeyev and Caden Korczak, the only 2 players in the lineup that were drafted and developed by the Vegas Golden Knights. White Cloud was a college free agent, so you can kind of count him a little bit.
Sure.
But isn't that hilarious? Like, we talk about how draft and
A-
develop is everything.
And
They
we're
have
talking
two
about
players.
NHL entry draft, not expansion draft. Because
Yes. Well, obvious, yeah. I think there's only like 2 players that remain though from the expansion draft too. Is it just Carlson and Theodore? Who else? I don't think anyone else. Was McNabb? Maybe McNabb.
Yeah, I think McNabb. I think was 2.
Yeah, so maybe McNabb too. So I mean, it's just it's a different group. It's a different group, but you know what? It's a good team. Like ultimately, even without the injuries, like they play the game right. Bruce Cassidy's a good coach, and they have that team playing well. Aiden Hill is starting in net, so we don't get to see the revenge game from Ilya Samsonov. I was hoping they would go Sammy though. Like, how do you not put Samsonov in net against his former team?
Samsonov didn't even play. I don't remember if he played against in Washington when he was with the Leafs. I think maybe once. I'm very surprised about that. Because like the goaltending hasn't been spectacular for Vegas this year.
No, it's like a team 880 save percentage. It's been brutal.
Yeah, Hill has actually Samsonov, I think, has been the better of the two as well, which is, I mean, not totally surprising because Aiden Hill he's had his ups and downs. I know that Aiden Hill is their number one, but the numbers are just not even that much.
Aiden Hill has an 8-3-1 record with an 885 save percentage.
This is the Jack Campbell of like he is Vegas's Jack Campbell right now, where it's like he's got the wins, but everything else ain't pretty for him.
Yeah, it really is not. Let's take a look at the matchup preview though, so we can get a better understanding of what these two teams are all about heading into this game. So both squads 11 wins, Toronto 11-6-2, Vegas 11-5-2. The Maple Leafs have been the better team at 5-on-5, winning 51.5% of their minutes, whereas Vegas just 47% of their minutes. So the fact that the team is 11-5-2, winning just 47% of their minutes at 5-on-5. Kind of screams that this is a team that might experience some regression moving forward, no?
I think so. I mean, you're not going to have a power play that's at 34. Like when you look at the goaltending they're getting, when you look at how their special teams with their power play being so good, and they're like their defense is. I talk about how their blue line's been pretty good, but I think also their goaltending just has not been very good this year.
No,
right? It's not sustainable.
They've given up a lot though. Like defensively, like they've given up. They sit bottom 5 in the league in both scoring chances and high danger chances against that 5-on-5 as well. So it's not like they've defended very well either, surprisingly, which is not usual, not typical out of a Vegas Golden Knights team.
No, it's not, especially with like Pietrangelo. Like Theodore hasn't been as great. It's funny because he just got a contract extension too. Like he has had his struggles this year. Maybe Hanifin being on the third pairing too is kind of interesting considering what they gave up to get him and the contract he's on. He's only averaging 16 minutes a night too. Like that's it's almost like they made that big splash. They signed him and then it's just like, okay, so now we're just gonna play him like less than probably what he would be playing on any other team. Yeah. Right. So yeah, and look, like this is something with Bruce Cassidy. Like the team goes through a bit of a lull. They go through their struggles, and then he gets them to kind of turn things around.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about Vegas. I think that they'll be perfectly fine by the end of the season. They'll be in the playoffs. It's still a good team when they get healthy, right? You get Mark Stone, your captain, back. The Aiden Hill, hopefully he can turn it around. I mean, he's one of the goalies who might play for the Four Nations. He's got to have a lot better than 885 save percentage to get there, right? So that's a concern if you're Team Canada and you're hoping he might be your number 1 or 2 goalie. But ultimately, it looks like Vegas, bit of a one-line team. Jack Eichel, Dorofeyev, and whatnot have pretty much been their number 1 line, and Mark Stone when he was there, obviously, and they've relied a lot on power play success, So if Toronto can, like we talk about keys to the game, if Toronto can limit their power play success, if they can stay out of the box, which has been an issue for the Leafs, but if they can stay out of the box, they've got a near 84% PK, which ranks, I believe, 8th in the NHL right now. If they can win that special teams battle, and play the game mainly at 5-on-5. I know Toronto's bagged up, but we saw Vegas. They're not as deep as they once were either. Toronto's got a chance to still pick up a win and 2 points here tonight. I think the books, FanDuel has this at even. Honestly, it's basically a pick 'em now. At one point, Toronto was favored, but with the injuries, it's gone down to a pick 'em. But I think Toronto still has a very good chance to win this game.
Yeah, I don't see why they shouldn't be in a good spot. I know that not having Matthews, not having Domi, but they still got they beat Connor McDavid and the Oilers with a very similar lineup. Okay, maybe no Domi this time around.
And Kampf.
But no,
big part of the penalty kill, to be fair.
Yeah, but I do think that it's still they still got good players. You got to still respect this lineup. I know that they got some young guys playing here, but their goaltending is still fine, right? Their goaltending is what's going to help them, through this stretch a lot. It has, right? They're not exactly, scoring at will here. So the goaltending, I think, is going to be key to as long as they keep it close. I'm not expecting this to be a blowout by any means. I mean, it could very well happen with the way Vegas's goaltending is, but I don't expect it. But I still think that they get the matchup right at being at home. They can dictate things a little bit better there. And I mean, no Ryan Reeves in the lineup means, you can play your fourth line guys a little more steady minutes as well.
Yes, that is true too. So you feel a little bit better sometimes. I just want to see, I'm fairly certain when I look at the Vegas Golden Knights, and I kind of made the statement. I just want to double check that it's a one-line team. So let me just quickly check and make sure that I was correct when I said that. So let me look it up on moneypuck.com and just see how many goals are being scored. Yeah, so basically that Barbashev, Eichel, Stone tandem has 15 goals this year, or trio has 15 goals this year. The next best trio is, Hurdle, Howden, and Dorofeyev, and they only have 7 goals between the three of them this year when they're out there on the ice. The Pearson, Carlson, Holtz line only has 4 goals, and
I think Carlson was hurt to start the year, so that kind of impacted him. But
fair enough. But I'm just saying, that's when they're out there, as a trio, as a line, right? Those three. So again, just to go back to the original point that I was going to make was it's a one-line team for the most part. Shut them down with Tanev and Jake McCabe. You shut down. You get the Eichel Barbashev assignment. Shut them down. Kill penalties. Should win this game. Those are the keys to the game.
Yeah, and you're going with the line. I know that Vegas is very physical line, but you're also going with the Leafs line that should be able to handle it, right? You're getting in. I know you're getting in a few more, bottom 6 guys in there, so that should favor them in a more physical matchup too.
Well, I mean, Grebenkin's a pretty big dude. He showed that he could play with some physicality throughout the preseason, right? And then Fraser Minton, he's 6'2", 200 pounds, so he's not a small guy either.
Nope.
Young, but not small. So, yeah, they should be able to handle the size and the physicality that Vegas is most likely going to throw at them. Should be a fun game. I'm interested to see what these kids look like, especially Grebenkin. We haven't seen him in an NHL setting. That's one that matters, at least with full NHL rosters. So excited to watch him tonight and to see how much different Minton can look as well. Last time we saw him was last year, and so it should be a good game. All right, that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On at Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Morassutti and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow to recap Leafs and Golden Knights. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.